Bit after 10. Thanks for everyone for attending. We do have a quorum. I know it was a bit of a risk of not having everybody here. So I'll call the meeting to order. First, second item of business is agenda approval.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimous. Third point is approval of the minutes.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't.
Okay. I think I can make motions here. I'll move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. I only have one discussion point. It says in here, under the timing, Ms. Swanson suggested one meeting in early October to go over any questions the committee has on the financial statements, and one meeting in early November to go over the final presentation. So given the problems we had getting this early October meeting scheduled, I think we should go ahead, Heather, if we can, and start soliciting availability for an early November meeting as our auditor recommended to go over the final presentation. So can you start to solicit availability so we don't end up like we did for this meeting?
Sure can.
Okay. Other than that, that was just a comment, but motion to, we have a motion and a second, so all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Opposed? Okay. So then the third point is public comment. No public, okay. No public comment. So that gets us to the meat of this meeting, really, which is the fiscal year 2023-24 draft audit review with Elsa from Martin Starnes Associate. Elsa, thank you for being here. We solicited questions from the committee members, and I think she got those, or she got an abstract or consolidation.
Yeah, she got a compilation of some of them that were her wheelhouse, and then I'm prepared to answer the other ones that were more so like management or policy type questions.
Okay. Which ones we want to try first? With Elsa's questions? The ones that were submitted to her? I haven't seen them, so I don't know what they were.
I figured everyone would just have dialogue, kind of ask whatever question, because I know some of the questions were answered by the actual financial statements getting distributed.
Okay. Well, Elsa, do you have any in front of you, or do you want me to read them?
Let's see. I guess I can discuss one point regarding, there was a question regarding the management letter. A management letter was not necessary in this audit. Typically, we do not issue management letters unless there's a concern that cannot be addressed by a finding or a certain recommendation that would not be qualified as a finding. So we did not have any such management letter issued this year.
Okay.
Is that consistent with the previous years? I thought we had received management letters, just kind of general ones before. Is that a change in policy?
That is consistent ever since that Martin Starnes has been the auditor on the for the town.
How about the internal controls assessment? There was some document that I thought was included. Did it not negative, just kind of spoke to it, it was good or whatever. Do you speak to that issue in any narrative?
There is a responsibility letter that gets issued with the final copy of the financial statements. That may be what you're thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, I guess I had a question on that. So are you anticipating any internal control issues or discrepancies that we should be aware of?
No, there are no findings this year. No internal control findings, no compliance findings.
Okay.
And the opinion is unmodified, which is a clean audit opinion.
Okay, great. You addressed two of my three questions. The third one was, we're on track to submit it on schedule to the LGC by the end of the month?
Yes, as long as there are no changes as a result of today's meeting, we can send the rep letter as soon as we get the letter from Alan Thompson. He did confirm via email that he has reviewed the financial statements and is in agreement. We're just waiting on his final letter, and then we can send the rep letter to Daniel to date the report, and then we can proceed with submission.
Okay. Good. So why don't I just talk about some of the topics that were in the questions, and if you can answer them, that'd be great. If it's more appropriate for Daniel, then we can have that discussion. One just had to do with overall net position. I think we concluded it increased by 4.5 million to 42 million overall. It's very strong. We're just, and it gives us a, more than 150% reserve. So we're just curious what contributed to that large increase in government activity net position.
Let's see.
Daniel, did you want to?
If you want to take it also, you can, or I've got a pretty good idea. I mean, I think most of it was unexecuted projects. I mean, there was a question about the vacancies, and that did contribute to some of the fund balance, probably to 200,000 or so.
There was a peer project in Block Q, that the unexecuted ones? Okay.
And also, I mean, we had very strong interest income from investments, and occupancy tax or ad valorem tax collections remain strong.
But do you have, if I could ask, do you have the numbers that contributed to that on a piece of paper? In some worksheet or some part of this audit?
Yeah, in the financial statements,
No, but there's lots of generalizations in that, categorizations in the piece. And I don't think I got all of it, okay? But can you provide us with that? You say that increase was due to the peer. How much of that peer money contributed to that increase? How much of the vacancies contributed to that increase? If you came up with a total number of that increase, then what contributed to that? That's all I'm asking. I'd like to see that.
Isn't that typically a chart in the audit that reconciles budget to actual? It seems like I saw it in the last audit.
Yes, there are budget to actual schedules in behind the footnotes. So if you're looking at the peer, you may want to look at the B-Part tax fund. That's Schedule 2.
Okay, does it break it out like peer, or is it just, account number, initial budget was this, actual was that, differences?
The peer expenses are broken out under transportation on that schedule. And then the comma grant, which is associated with the peer, is under revenues.
See, that's the problem. Your plan, I've got to see all this stuff.
Okay, so did we get that table, or is that going to show up in the final audit when we see it? I think that's the question. 'Cause
what table?
the reconciliation of budget to actual.
Yeah, the budget actual will be in the final report. And I
Okay.
think it's in, you said it's in Schedule what?
Schedule 2, it's in the B-Part tax fund. It's right behind the general fund schedule.
Okay, we got a set of spreadsheets, tabs in Excel,
Should
so.
it be in the Excel sheet? And-
Yes, it's the SRF B-Part tax fund.
I didn't get that.
Did we, I don't remember seeing it, but
It's
did you see it?
Schedule 2, page 30 or 40.
What do you think, just then, in the interest, this is a great news. I think people just want to understand it better. So those component pieces, would it be reasonable that y'all could just look at those and maybe give us a brief summary report on the component pieces and what exactly happened or didn't happen with the peer that contributed to extra income, and what was that? Just a ballpark. I think that's a fair question for people to want to know where the increase was. And, how much of that do you anticipate continuing? Some of it might or might not. Those kind of increases.
Yeah. 4.5 million is pretty significant.
Yeah, that's a great,
That's great news, but it's,
want to understand it.
understand it and yeah. Know whether it's, yeah, go ahead.
The reason for I'm probably the engineer in the group, okay? So I like to deal with gauges and stuff. And so what I read is the true. So when my neighbors ask me, how much do we have invested in this pier? How much have we spent? How much are we going to spend? If we extend this pier, we're trying to put numbers together so that we can inform them. It's kind of at least along the 90% true.
Yeah, well, I don't know that that number is gonna be captured in.
But you see,
the
we're the
financial statements.
interface between the community and other people. We're not just a sole entity that, do you know what I mean? People ask questions, you're on the
No, I
audit.
understand that, but
Okay,
I mean,
I'm not trying to be,
no, you're good. I think I understand what you're asking, but the amount spent on the pier is gonna be budgeted from year to year, like,
understand. I'm just talking about this budget. I understand.
yeah, but as far as the financials go, I mean, the assets accounted for, but, I mean, like the engineering and all that that's been spent on the pier, that doesn't contribute to the land asset, so it wouldn't be,
I understand that.
you know,
Yeah, my understanding, we had like 1.2 million in the budget for the pier, and we didn't spend it. Is that the right number? Or? So that's 1 million out of the 4 million, 1.2 out of the 4.5.
yeah.
And then, I think the Block Q was 300,000 or something, so maybe that gets us up closer to 1.5 to 2 million, but we still got 2.5 million that was a surprise, a welcome surprise, and great news, but it's a big number to pop up. Will this show up in the June 30th financial statements that kind of shows budget to actual at that level, or, you know, where's the, you know, early indicator that this is coming?
I mean, I would say the early indicator is the budget actually.
In the June, at the end of June? Okay. And that was, I think, only on the website for days. I don't think it's out there anymore. I don't think it got out there until into July, August, sometime like that.
I kind of see a connection really between the first and third bullet. So if we can maybe just take a step back from, you know, when you have a great year and things are some positives there, then you can quickly jump to bullet number 3 here about, well, maybe we're holding on to too much money and we need to consider some kind of tax reduction. And before you jump to that, you really need to understand, or what are we seeing? Is this kind of a one-time deal? Or do we think we're just gonna be in high cotton for a long time? I suspect it's more one-time deal because you didn't spend the money. And that's what we just need to kind of know that, because you just want to know what the reality is, so you're making good decisions when you set, you know, percentage goals for the general fund or tax rates. At least you're making an informed decision. Now, I think that's what all anybody wants. And not to overreact to a great year and say it's always going to be this way. Perhaps it's not, because some of the things that happened this year might not be happen every year, and we need to know that. I think it's like, that's the whole kind of big picture purpose I think we're after.
Yep. And I agree. I think we need to tie it to 3. 146% reserves, which is way above, you know, the legal or the mandated one, and way above even our 40% policy. I'm sure we'll have discussions about, you know, how much should we be stocking away. That's I don't know, maybe where does that stand relative to other beach communities that are kind of hanging out here?
Have the same risk.
Yeah,
we do.
well, yeah, especially looking at, you know, what happens to our neighbors in northern, you know, western North Carolina. I mean, they need every penny of reserves they've got.
So does a town have a 40% policy target?
Yes.
40 to 70%.
40 to 70, okay, that's the board's policy, okay. And then, I'm sure the state's much lower than that, but 40
And
to,
to the question about our neighbors, the last time I met with our neighbors, some are as high as 150%, some are as low as 4%.
That's below, yeah,
Yeah.
wow, okay. Okay, I mean, I think this is good news. I absolutely agree with what Tony says, is it's good news. We need to understand if we,
Yeah,
you know,
I'll see if
we
I
struck it, you know,
Yeah.
we won the lottery, or this is ongoing, in which case, yeah, we should do some thinking about tax rates and set-asides and everything.
So as an example, just making sure I'm understanding this, let's say there was $1 million planned to spend on the pier that didn't get spent without getting caught up in the pier, just didn't spend it. So we have $1 million more than we thought we would, because really it's just probably likely a timing difference. We just kind of need to know that and not think, okay, that's just automatically going to happen every year, because it probably isn't. I mean, is that true? Would you say that's
Yeah,
a?
yeah, no, I don't think this is a every year thing. We're not
Yeah.
gonna have.
I think any information you could help us to understand that what percentage of this really isn't every year, it's just a great year, let's celebrate that and high five and move
Yeah.
on, but not hold ourselves to think that we're gonna automatically get it next year.
Yeah,
I don't know about I mean, I don't, David might speak to that about the vacancies and things. I don't know if that's a trend that continues maybe for future years, or how much of it's kind of one-time deal.
I'd like to think it's not a trend, but it appears that it's a sticking point. I mean, you know, it's been my experience that, you know, your mission capable rates, if you're 90%, you're doing good. But, you know, we've got, and in small workforces, when you have one vacancy, it has a compounding effect on not just the financial statements, but in actual ability to produce a service. So,
And I think number two kind of speaks to that, you know, if you have, because of the inability to, you know, fill positions, and you have an abnormal high number of positions that are vacant, well, that's contributing to that 4.95 million. That might not be, and hopefully won't be, something that you'll see every year as you fill those positions. So that's the kind of insight I think we're kind of getting at with some of these questions.
yeah, I think that, unless there's anything else on general fund, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet down talks about water and sewer. Because I know that actually, we wrote a letter last year because of, you know, and we'll have to write a letter again this year, and I guess, Elsie, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are. Should we be concerned about our fund, water sewer fund?
Let's see, let me take a quick look. Your operating income or your actually operating loss for the water and sewer fund is 272,000. You do have a change in net position that is positive of 163,000. That's due to your capital charges that run through your other financing sources.
Right, so
I would
this,
say, and you do have a positive cash flow from operating activities of 303,000.
positive cash flow, okay. So the fact that we had a negative loss last year and this year means we'd probably have to write a letter again? Explain the capital
Yes.
charges that flip us from negative to positive? Yeah. I mean,
Yes, the LGC has a performance indicator which factors in your operating net income or loss and backing out depreciation and adding in your debt service. And so that number is currently 139,000 in the negative. And so that pops out a performance indicator of concern that you would have to provide a letter to the LGC for.
Okay. I mean, I recognize this is an enterprise fund, we're not making we don't want to make a ton of profit and sock it away, but should we be concerned, I guess, that we're kind of having losses except for the capital charge?
You do have a positive unrestricted net position, which is what's available in the fund, of 5.5 million. The only concern I would have is that your operating income is currently at a loss. You have an operating loss. You may want to consider raising rates, but that's a management decision.
Okay.
How many audits do you do that the town or cities find themselves in that position and having to write that letter to the LGC explaining the difference?
I would say probably a few. A lot of them are getting a performance indicator for having older assets, typically in the water and sewer fund, that they need to plan on increasing their capital purchases. So I would have to do some digging and some research on that to give you an exact number.
But would you say most of them are that way, or most of them are not that way? Kind of, where do we find ourselves in that camp?
I really would have to do some digging. This is one of my early audits, so as far as this year, I don't have all the numbers done to be able to do a comparison at this time. I'd have to look at prior years at this point.
That might be one you want to look at, really.
Yeah, I think we want to flag that for, I think that's, so we've got all, there was a question here about significant commitments, contingent liabilities, not reflect, everything's in there, right? There's nothing pending that's hanging out there for a significant or contingent liability?
Yes, and we just got your attorney letter today. I need to take a look at that. It was received while I was on the phone. I just got an email about it. So if there are any concerns as a result of the attorney letter, we would need to add a disclosure for that. But I will be reviewing that.
Okay. I think those are the ones, Tony, did you have, let's see.
That mine was just more, I'll find out some of these from David. It wasn't really the stuff I was interested in. I don't need to.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
I had a couple to tag on to Tony's issues on parking.
Okay.
Just curious, and I'm sure it's in there somewhere if you can, to give us a summary, but since we're in the early years of that, I was just curious, how do we assess the parking revenue versus expenses and profit generated, and how is that used? It's kind of just a big picture look at all that.
So since we contract that out to Auto Connect, we don't really have any expenses. They handle all the enforcement and.
But their
most of
fee is,
the expenses.
okay. Do you just get the net, will you just get the net from it?
Get a check.
Just get a check, wow, wonderful.
And our signs and everything, that investment's all up, or did they pay for that, put all the parking signs and?
We pay for
maintain-
some signage.
Just,
Okay, but it's not much, right?
I think that the first run-through might have been $4 or $5 grand,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, of startup, because they're 4x4s and they're, this much,
Okay.
that kind of sign.
So that net income from the parking this last year, what was that net when it's all said and done, since we're just kind of just getting a check? How much was that?
Auto Connect actually sends us a report
Yeah.
monthly.
But it's, that money, you're depositing that money in some place on our financial statement that's attributed to
It's in the B Park Fund.
B Part Fund, okay. So anybody have any idea how much the town made on parking this year?
It was more than we expected.
So contributing to a better financial position, is that something that we
Absolutely.
would expect to continue, or a one-time,
Well,
should continue, I guess?
if I could, just from what I've been told,
Mm,
it was around $500,000, the last number I saw.
I'll tell you exactly what it was if you give me just a second.
Thank you.
Okay. And that was based on a shorter season than we've got now, is that,
Correct.
yeah?
But what kind of troubles me, no matter what the net income is from this whole thing, is that That was a 2-year contract, the way I understand it, correct?
With the vendor?
With Auto? Yeah.
Auto Connect contract that we signed, that the town manager signed, was for 2 years.
That the board approved.
I just, it's for, I don't know who. if
If
that
the
was-
board authorized the town manager to sign,
So wait a minute, no, just let me, walk me through this so I get the right story. The contract was a 2-year contract. So when the contract came up for renewal, did the town manager go to the town board members to request extending that or going out for bid for a new contract? Do we have to recontract that, or what's this, there's a process with all this
Yeah.
that I understand, that doesn't seem to be taking hold with Auto Connect.
let me tell my side, and David, correct me if I.
Well, do y'all want the answer to the revenue question?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
About
If
800
it's only $2, we don't really care.
820.
820, yes.
Or
That was
approximately
actually listed
820,
in-
yeah. I think that's what's in, right here, it's
Yes, got it.
showing.
So that's
I
the
see it.
revenue we collected that's in the audit? Okay, wow, okay.
So that
And that was a partial year. That wasn't a full year
That's
round.
correct. And the answer to the contract question was when you went to year-round,
Yep.
that contract was amended at that time, I believe, but we'd have to check.
Yeah, my understanding was, we changed the rates too, I think, a couple of the
Correct.
rates, and that had to be renegotiated. And I remember there was a question on, their transaction fee, because they had a transaction fee. So, and I don't know if you negotiate, it was kind of unresolved, I think, but we said, let's go ahead and see if we can get them to, so I guess it would be the same thing. We would have to renew it again this year for next year at some point?
I'd have to pull the contract
Okay.
to validate.
Okay.
Well, you clarified my question, so the 820 that we see is really net. There's no offsetting expenses because that is a net number.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Tim brought it up, and I mean, this is the one that keeps me awake at night, is if we got a monster, if we were in the situation in western North Carolina, we got a monster right at the beginning, we would probably lose almost all the B part 3.9 million revenue, and probably lose a significant portion of the 820,000 parking. And we would have additional expenses. So I think this gets back, and we're not going to solve it now, but that gets back to reserves, how much rainy day, because these are more than just a rainy day. I mean, they're like devastating financial things when they hit. So I think it warrants looking at reserve policies and where we're at.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so if I could finish asking my question. It's a 2-year contract, is it still a 2-year contract?
I don't have it in front of me, and I'll have to review the contract in order to provide an accurate answer.
Okay,
I
so-
don't remember off the top.
All right, so, but what I'm trying to figure out is, who is the overseer, who is the auditor of Auto Connect? Who audits them to make sure that they're on the straight and narrow? Nobody gets a free ride. So who holds them, their thumb on them, to make sure that we're getting what we're supposed to get, and making sure that what we're actually, they're contributing to our welfare is correct, or within the industry standard or whatever?
Yeah, I get the point, because basically, we get a check for Auto Connect, and as far as this audit's concerned, we reconcile the check, yes, that's the amount we received, but we have no visibility into Auto Connect's internal policies and practices and how many tickets, I mean, they report it, but we have no audit of their internal
Correct,
operations, is that,
correct.
okay?
I don't think that's healthy.
Okay, my thought would be that's a negotiating point next time with them, is we want to have the right to, have them do an internal audit and report to us, or for us to, we'd have to get permission, because we didn't sign up to allow ourselves to do that, but we can negotiate that going forward, that we want them to have an external audit, objective third party, and have them report to us That, to me, would have to be negotiated into the contract with them. Is that,
Why is there so much silence on, is it disagreement or?
no, no, it's a valid point. We are taking them at their word when they send us a check for 820,000, that's the right amount. That's all we can do because, you know, they give us data to support it. I've seen the reports. But, you know, even those, you know, the ones I've seen of, you know, how many people park, well, how many people parked at the pier, but you don't know how many of those had annual passes versus paid the daily rate versus got a ticket. So, that's the whole level of behind the covers that we've not seen. Okay, is there anything else related to the external auditor here that we want to ask?
So,
Or is there anything that you would want to tell us that you haven't said? Elsie?
We have audited, as your major program this year for single audit purposes. We audited the Water Resources Development Grant Program, and we did not have any compliance findings or anything on that.
Water resources, what is it, I'm sorry, development plan?
Development.
Water Resources Development Grant Program.
Okay. And no finding, no issues, is that?
No issues, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. So I guess we'll do a last call for Elsie before we let her off the phone. You good, Mike?
yeah, I guess, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your being involved here. And I assume you still, because, you know, in our minutes from last meeting, you're still recommending that we meet early November to look at the actual report that had been filed with the LGC?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I do have a couple other meetings in November, but if you can let me know the date, I can see if I can work for my schedule.
Well, we're trying to get ourselves scheduled ahead of the Board of Commissioners meeting so that we can report to the board as we're supposed to report. So,
Right.
the Board of Commissioners meetings are third Tuesdays of the month, and given the timing, yeah, it's the 19th, so, I mean, we're pulling a scramble. This is like the latest we could meet now to have information for next Tuesday's meeting, so, Heather, what would be the right week to plan, because we need to,
I'll get everybody's availability, but we would need it before,
okay,
we need it before the 8th,
to get it in the packet?
yeah.
Okay. Is that even doable, Elsie, before the 8th?
Yeah, before the 8th, I'm wide open the week of the 4th.
Okay. Shoot, I'm good for trying to figure it out now, because that would save
Well,
us
you
some
need
problems.
to, you need to have the other members,
So you're wide open the week of the 4th, is that what you just said?
but you need.
That's correct.
you
Okay,
need-
so
you need to-
let's-
You need to poll the other
Right.
members too.
Let's Heather, let's try to get that sent out as soon as we can to get something the week of the 4th. After the 31st, right, because that's your due date.
Yes, thank you.
So it's like April 15th to tax people, that's right.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you then in November, and we appreciate all that you and your firm have done for us.
You're welcome, thank you. I'll see you at the Board of Commissioners meeting in November.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Okay, so next item is our report, and just to refresh, our ordinances say that we are supposed to provide a written report to the board, so we're scrambling to do that ahead of the board. Heather and I met, and we think if we can get the wording down and agreed upon here, then, Heather, does this need to be an official letterhead, or is it an email, or what is?
No, Pat, when she was the head, she would just email me something, so I mean, that's absolutely fine. Or if you wanna email me something and I'll put it on letterhead if you prefer, however you guys wanna do it.
Well, I think we want to get the wording now so that we all agree and we can vote on the wording. I don't know if we want to capture that in the minutes or we want to take notes. My thought so
Is it
far.
purely about the audit review? Just
Yeah, yeah,
A
the-
letter regarding the audit
Yeah,
review?
it's in our ordinance. It says, review the annual audit report with the external auditor and provide a written report, a written opinion to the BOC.
Got it.
So my thought is that this letter would say that we had this meeting, we talked to the auditor, we reviewed these key points, they answered these key questions, and our findings are, and I'm guessing at this point, it's like, we see nothing that's gonna hold us up, and we should, no items of concern. I mean, that's what we need to,
Yeah. Right.
hammer out, and it'd be good if we could get exact wording so that we can just write it today or tomorrow and hand it out at the meeting on Tuesday. So, like I said, my thought was we would have the meeting, and we talked about the reserve balances.
Yeah, now, I was, Tom, how much detail do we talked about maybe having some further explanation on this revenue windfall with this increased revenue picture, that fund balance question, which you mentioned. And I don't know if you want to put anything about that water and so.
I think we should put something about,
Yeah.
because we're gonna have to write a letter.
Yeah.
And that's something that should be,
Just saying, yeah,
okay.
we discussed those areas and board staff can look at further follow-up.
Okay, so yeah, to me, my big three are no internal controls issues or finding discrepancies, and clean opinion, which is something that I think they want to know, and
On time.
on time, meet the deadline, on
It's hard to
time,
beat all that.
time filing. And then, those to me are findings.
Yeah.
And then ahead of that, we could say, we discussed the fund balances, net position. Also finding is the water sewer letter is going to be needed. I think that's
Yeah,
a
it's gonna
finding.
require a
That's
second
what we have to
letter.
say. So we talked about net position, we talked about reserves. What else do we want to say?
I'd suggest that, when you mention the letter
Yep.
to the LGC, that perhaps you'd want to include, the requirement is for all the board members are gonna have to sign that. So
Okay.
there's a little bit of education, that the LGC is imparting, through their process of having that letter to be done.
Okay.
Deborah, do you think those water and sewer fees need to be reviewed?
Yes, especially, is my opinion that, and it's backed up with the way that the profitability ratios are measured and don't count the capital fees.
Right.
But as everybody here knows, we have a capital charge on the tax bill.
Right.
That is a watermelon through the snake that provides a large portion of that. As the town's debt values come off the books, that's not going to be available anymore, because we're not supposed to charge
Right.
any more than is required to offset the debts. So the practice of only raising rates to offset the county's wholesale charge
Yeah.
increases, we're probably going to have
Think differently.
a wholesale rate study here.
Yeah.
I won't say next week,
Yeah,
but
right.
it's certainly reasonable to assume that in 2 years that we should have something accomplished. And I think that the Public Works Director is actually crab walking that way now, working with the Rural Center, the Rural Water Association, to get something in place so that it can be dealt with in the not too distant future.
Right.
It's not an immediate thing, but as long as, you know, we have that capital charge that's legislatively authorized, and it's an anomaly, there's not that many of them. Oak Island has a similar setup. We're gonna continue to get that letter.
And that goes away once we've paid it off, is that?
Well,
Yeah,
it,
'cause you did-
unless you have more debt.
I don't think you can charge it or call it that if you don't have the debt. Don
Yeah.
said. That's really what it's.
Well,
And then it puts it on the tax bill, makes it deductible.
Yeah.
There's,
Right.
and there's another camel coming into the fray there with the other legislation on system development fees.
Yeah.
So that's has to deal with how you can charge for future expansions, which a lot of times you could embed those types of things in your rate. So it's not a flip the switch that we can you know, automatically make that assumption that it'll go away. We're gonna have to have a significant amount of pondering and considerations, and probably have to get some professionals to assist in actually setting those rates or making a recommendation. But I'm going to wait until the Public Works Director, we get some more dialogue with the Rural Water Association before we bring that to the commissioners.
Okay, so as far as the audit is concerned, I think we'll just say, because of the situation, same as last year, we had an operating loss. We're gonna have to sign a letter or send a letter to the LGC, and all board members are gonna have to sign it. And then we can say something about, you know, we recommend you start looking into this because it's coming and it's big and we want.
And I'd say that operating loss is due to the cap, you know, that. the
Right,
capital
right.
charge. It's not.
It's the inverse,
Yeah,
it's the inverse calculation
Well,
of
the operating income takes into account the debt
Right,
expense,
yeah.
but the revenue to pay that expense.
It's
the
not
capital
included.
charge is not in operating income.
Yep, yep. Think we
I
can.
think the takeaway is, as David says, it's probably worthwhile to start looking at what that could look like differently for whatever changes might be or need to be happening or happen.
And gosh, the last thing that I want to do is to send a shockwave out that says that we're going to raise the
Right.
rates, you know, because I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So, let me try to summarize, that with regards to water sewer, because the LGC does not, treat capital charges as revenue, we're gonna show an operating loss, and we're gonna have to send a letter, and, just make them aware of that, and then we want to recommend that they consider looking at future rates, or do we want to not go there yet?
Well,
The other thing is we can go back to this
management's
after the
going to
audit.
make that recommendation.
Pardon?
Management's going to make that recommendation,
Yeah.
where the audit committee wants, you
Yeah,
know.
I don't know if we were to say rates or just maybe we just look at, I mean, some way to just look at all the changes. It's a complicated scenario. Rates might be the piece, but it might not be the piece. I'd hate to throw that word out there. And
Okay,
there could be some other,
yeah, I mean, last thing I want to do is throw something
Yeah.
ahead of, I
And
mean,
then
we
say
want to,
that
we want to just say, you know, we're good to go on the audit, it's going to
Yeah.
get filed, we want you to be
make
aware
you aware of
of
this
these
letter and,
things, yeah.
and staff is probably gonna look at, you know, the way that's handled going forward. You know,
Okay,
just not-
okay, okay. Okay, let me find my notes, what I was thinking. So I mean, Heather, can we pull this out of the minutes, or do you want to sit down and actually, you know, I want to be real clear that this is.
Yeah, I don't
the-
wanna write it. I want you
Okay.
guys to write it, and I mean, I don't
Okay,
mind
so can we,
typing it, but-
if we talk it, can you then pull it out of the
Yeah.
minutes and, I mean, I'll help you write it, but I want to make sure we all
Yeah,
understand. So, you know, the audit committee met on Friday, February 11th to review the draft audit report information with the external auditor and address questions. Questions were asked.
I am not that fast.
No, isn't this in the minutes, is this in the recording or not?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
we'll watch it on YouTube.
No, Well, yeah.
Yeah, I posted on YouTube.
Yeah, so that's the intro. Questions were asked about the net position increase, the unassigned fund balances, and the water and sewer, parking revenues, and the water and sewer, what do we want to say, financials, position? What do we want to say on that? Water and sewer fund,
I
okay?
think that's general enough.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what we did,
So those 4 bullets, kind of those,
yeah,
we met, those 4.
and we talked about those things.
Yeah.
You know, based on,
Can
the
I,
go ahead.
the letter that needs to be written to the LGC is written by this gent right here.
Yeah.
It should be run through you. It wasn't last year.
Well, it's always, it's presented to the board and they sign it, they approve it.
Right, but should not the audit committee review it before it goes to the board? Or because you're the
And when does it
CEO?
need to be filed? I guess we have time,
There's
Yeah,
plenty
I'd
of
have to
time.
look at
'Cause
the,
it's-
I mean, it's gonna be after,
the audit.
yeah.
So so we should then review it. If we have this meeting early November with the auditor, we should be able to review the letter then,
Yes, because,
and then notify the board that we've reviewed the letter and we have no issues with them signing it.
Which last year also, before I even gave it to the board, I did ask the LGC to review it. And they said, yeah, this is good.
Okay,
So, and they said, keep this on file.
Use the
because
same
This
format.
may be a recurring thing, and they said
Yeah.
we can use the same
Of
letter.
course.
Obviously, the numbers are gonna change.
Right.
but
Yeah.
it'll be the same letter, but I can bring that next audit meeting.
yeah, if you can bring it to the audit committee, then then we will be able to make a recommendation to the board that we've read it and we see no issues.
my position, the reason for asking is that that's why we have this audit committee, so that you can.
Well,
We can
As
make
an
that
audit.
record,
right,
okay?
yep, okay. So we talked about the questions, so then based on the information the auditor presented and their responses to our questions, our findings are as follows. We expect a clean opinion. We do not expect any issues or deficiencies with regards to internal controls. We anticipate an on-time
Yep.
filing with the LGC. And we anticipate the need to write a letter to the LGC explaining the situation with the water and sewer fund and the fact that it shows an operating loss because capital charges are not included in the revenue that gets reported to the LGC. Is that accurate? Okay. Okay.
That's it.
And Heather, are you comfortable? I'll stick around after this to make sure I get all the wording if that's good for you. or
If
how
you want, I'll just listen to the tape and send it, I'll
Okay.
send it to you afterwards, because I'll have to format the tape and stuff to
Okay,
listen to.
and when do you need it to post or put on the table for the meeting next Tuesday?
As long as we get it straightened out by Tuesday morning, we're good to go. But
Okay.
I'll listen to it today and get
Okay.
it over to you.
Okay,
Now, my naive question now would be, what is the anticipated tax rate this year, based on that change?
well, you lost me. The property tax rate?
Yeah,
It's at 14 cents, that was passed with the budget. So
it's going to be based on this,
it was based on the budget that was passed in June for the 24-25 year, which did not change the tax rate, and the tax rate was 14 cents, so it's remaining at 14 cents.
oh,
So I do think, right now we're focused on the audit, and we don't want to throw any roadblocks up, but I do think maybe in November we can start to talk about, what needs to be done going forward, and maybe
Okay.
make some recommendations, or,
For the audit committee.
from the audit committee to the board saying, the audit's done now, so at that point it's filed, everything's done. We, we've reviewed it all, but, based on that audit, we think you need to look at this and this and this, or we would recommend that you, that would be the whole fund balance situation, which does take into effect tax rates and the water sewer fund issues. The other one that's mine is, and I think Mary Vale and Tim are working on it, is the monthly reports so that,
Some kind of summary report.
yeah, I mean, what I'd like to get to is by looking at the monthly reports, this $4 million shouldn't have been a surprise. It's like we saw it coming and it's kind of worked its way through.
And new buy.
Yeah, so, but they're working on that. They couldn't be here today, so.
And the contract with this audit firm, is that a multi-year?
Yeah, that's another thing I think
Or
for
is that gonna
November.
be-
And
Is that
that,
on our list?
yeah, help me out here, Heather. So if, some point we need to decide we're gonna stay with them next year or not, or go out to bid or whatever. And that needs to be decided in January, I think. Didn't we say last year, January, February, if we were to change? When would that?
The sooner the better on that, because there is a shortage of auditors.
Yep.
But this, I'm just making sure, because I might have missed that meeting as well. The one we're doing now, they're really working on a one-year contract, so it's gonna require some
It was a
action.
Three-year.
pricing, right? It was a 3-year contract or 3-year contract with pricing, but,
Okay.
yeah. But, that doesn't mean we absolutely have to take them. We can renegotiate the contract because the rates are in there. But yeah, I think that should get added to the November, audit committee meeting.
Which,
Yep.
I wanted to add, because I misunderstood it earlier when you referenced the 4.5 million. I thought we were talking about fund balance, but talking about net position. A large part of that is also due to liabilities going down, debt service going down. We retired,
2.5 million, or
Yeah.
easy.
So that's actually probably the largest portion of our net position increase in debt service going down.
We can give a very short, concise summary of what that net position increase is, I'm sure.
Yeah,
That would be good.
yeah,
It's-
yeah, I'll look at last year's and actually have the numbers side by side.
Is that something you can talk on Tuesday?
When?
BOC meeting? Or, I mean, we're gonna, actually.
I think it'd be better if we could do that next audit committee.
Okay. I do think we ought to add something in our findings that says it's really strong net position, so, we're talking about no internal control issues, clean audit, filed on time, we got to write a letter, but, I mean, the real overall big message is we're really strong. We've made, $4.5 million improvement in a net position. I think we want to add that, Heather, to the findings, probably the first finding.
Yeah, no, I think we need to brag about that.
Yeah,
I'm not here that much, but I don't think that's the perception in the community that the town is as solid a financial position as it is. So I think anything we can do to,
yep,
where appropriate,
yep.
just make sure we say that, I think.
Which would always tease up the next question is like, how did we get, I mean, we got a 4 point, so this would flow into any reconciliation of, what made up that 4.5 million. And I guess I'm
I
hearing,
mean, the big things are, the biggest thing is debt service.
okay,
Second biggest would be unexecuted year project
and Buckview and others.
and
But I'm guessing we underestimated parking revenue. I didn't, 800,000,
Yeah,
so,
and revenue's coming in strong, parking and investment for both.
And the extended season.
And I would be remiss if we didn't plug for the tax collector also. I mean, our
100%.
rate's above
Yeah,
99%, as it has been for many years.
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, it was last year that it actually went down, right, because of collections?
Just
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of scary that when taxes are plateauing.
well,
that-
and, you know, what happens there, you can have one property owner that has 40 properties that because of their taxing, position, they elect to delay,
Yep,
and then, you know, that's
push it to the next year.
that's a smidge,
Yep.
you know, and then the next year it shows that you really came ahead.
But, you know, I think my position on that, and people have asked me about that, is that this is not really a hard place to collect taxes. You've got the type of clientele who live here who are going to pay their taxes. It's not a tough job.
Yeah, and, well, you gotta
You know?
you gotta keep up with it. You gotta keep
Yeah.
up with
I'm
it.
not
But
saying-
I agree with your
Yeah.
point. So much to the effect, and because it's the socio-demographic, but also the reality of real estate here at the beach, that in fact, if there are a couple, 3 years that don't get paid, and especially with depressed interest rates, it's actually a better deal to let the penalties and interest collect on them, because when the property sells,
Yeah.
you get it.
Yeah,
Just timing differences.
Yeah, I
You're gonna
think-
get it at some point in time.
yeah, no, I.
You're gonna
you know,
get it soon.
Yeah, my takeaway is we really should focus more on property value, you know,
Yeah.
total property value, because that's where, if we get built out, or, you know, not so much new, we would see the property base
Yeah.
level out. And
May.
then- Well,
May.
there'll be turnover, take old houses, build new ones, but it's not like we're building $1 million houses on empty lots that are appraised nothing right now, and end up, you know, boom, 2 million goes to the tax base, so, okay.
I have a level of knowledge question. In part of the audit, it addresses the issue of police officers working for a period of 5 years and retiring. Is that a vested? Is that when, if I work for 5 years here, is that a North Carolina state?
Yes, sir.
Because all my buds around the country use 7%. So that's a North
So-
Carolina standard?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, I'm now confused, 5%?
Okay, if you work.
In 5 years.
I'm not obviously expert in this, but many people work a second job after their first job for a period of so let's say Missouri, for example, or New
Yeah.
York State.
Yep,
They'll work 20 years as a police officer or 30 years,
yep,
and as they'll use that to go get a chief of police job or some other job to kind of help their moonlight years and work for 7 years to receive a second small retirement, yet with that, there may be some substantial medical benefits associated with it. So here, my question was, I guess if that's a North Carolina standard, what else do we then end up paying for, or does it go into a retirement fund?
it's a
or-
defined benefit plan, it's not a defined contribution plan? I mean, it's not like a 401K.
No, I could
Because
find it. I would
but
just,
normally, my experience has been, you know, 401K, you contribute, the company may contribute, and you don't get the company's contribution until 5 years vesting, and then you get it. So if you leave within 5 years, you lose whatever they put in. You still get whatever you put in. But that's
It's not a-
different than getting defined
this is not a 401K. it's just-
benefit that says, we're paying you X dollars in retirement, like an annuity, you know, we're paying you.
A pension.
Yeah, yeah.
My understanding was that it was an annuity type setup. I mean, I could find it, but I don't want to
There-
waste your time.
I don't
The,
know.
you're talking about 5 or more years of creditable service.
Yes.
And the vesting in that retirement, of course, is at a significantly lower.
Oh, yes,
I mean,
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
very.
Yes,
Is
absolutely.
it some
It's
percentage of
marginal.
salary or
I mean,
percentage of total? or-
It's only, your retirement pay is only based on 5 years of service.
12 or 13%
Okay.
or
I
something
mean,
like
it's,
that.
it's low.
So it's the medical that's the big ticket.
Well, it may be, I didn't know, that's why I went, it was just a level of knowledge.
Okay.
Because we don't,
Yeah, no, it's, there's, retirees don't get town medical benefits.
Oh, really? Oh, the retirees, right,
They
right.
get state or they contribute to a state, is that
Supposed to
what
be
works?
Medicare,
Medicare.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody's doing that anymore. It's just, they're bankrupted. Okay, are we good?
I think so.
Heather, are we good? I'm
I'll
a-
listen to it, we should be.
Okay.
Heather, I'm gonna leave my dates with you that first week in November before I leave, okay?
Perfect.
I will too, yeah. Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. We're adjourned.